My laptop didn't work, so I'm using my phone.
Okay,
I'm using my phone as well.
yeah,
That's
you
good.
know how, I don't. My computer is tipping to the side. It's okay.
Okay, we're ready. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Ready, Sahar?
Yes, we're ready, Brother Rashi. Go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the American Muslims in the Public Square. We're really honored today to have one of the most unique sisters. May Allah bless them and reward them, Sister Maryam Dewan and Sister Nadira Najib. They have been part of my life personally for almost 33 years. I met them when I'm few days here in Portland, Oregon. We met at Sister Nadira's home, and Sister Maryam Dewan was there, and Imam Najib and Brother Wesley Salahuddin. Sister Nadira and Sister Maryam, what a blessing, what a beautiful journey for me as a Yemeni, to understand my beloved sister and brothers, the African American Muslim community. Tell us your story, please.
Oh my
We start
goodness.
with you, Sister
Sister,
Nadira
go
or Sister
ahead.
Maryam?
Go ahead, Nadir.
No, we already had this discussion, Miriam, please. So thank you.
Sister Maryam, go ahead, please.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. It is my honor and pleasure to be here with you. I'm asking Allah to guide my tongue, to guide my affairs, as I'm with my family and we can get relaxed and start laughing. So I want to stay with the point. I have a handful of notes and I will respond the best I can to your questions. There's a lot of information here. I did not realize how much ground we've covered in 33 years. Anyway, this is very much needed because we need to talk to each other. We need to explain. We need to go back and recap and redirect and cherish what Allah in His infinite mercy has given us with each other and with this community in this particular location that's in this region, in this part of the world. So I'm just very grateful to Allah for that. The question in front of me is to talk about.
Before we go to the question, Sister Maryam, what's your story? Tell us who are you and where you came from and what you're aspiring for.
Okay, that is the question. Is how I got to this point, and so I took a handful of notes. First of all, my name is Laveda Marion Poole. My parents. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was actually born in Tacoma, Washington, and it was my great honor and privilege to return to that area as a Muslim. And so that's for the most part. I'm the grandmother for 4 or 5 children. I'm the mother of 8. I have 1 great grandchild. And at this point, I'm married to the Imam of the masjid there in Tacoma. And it's a small community, but it's vibrant. And I feel very much at home there. My sister and I hope to return to that area and complete a research project because our mother spent the formative years right after I was born, which was August 6, 1945. And her and I are going to work together to put together what our mother faced alone, trying to raise a child and trying to, at the same time, propel herself forward. So I would spend the first 7 years of my life there in Tacoma. And then my mother and her husband moved to Seattle, and I grew up in Seattle. I graduated from Franklin and Garfield high schools, and I went to the community college. I spent about 4 to 6 years in foster homes. Those were the best years of my life. I had 2 incredible foster mothers, and they guided me through to adulthood. I also had an incredible grandmother, and she gave me 2 years of nurturing and training that would last me for the rest of my life and took me into the profession I am in now, which is early childhood. I have a CDA in, which is national licensing for early childhood education. And I've worked for the Albina Head Start for probably over 20 years. And before that, I worked for the Center for Black Education that was founded by Ron Herndon and Farida Muhammad and Mama Malika. And from there, and there's where I worked with Nadira for off and on for about 12 years. And the community there around that school, because at that time there were two large school districts. The Sister Clara Muhammad School had a network of weekend schools and that were adjacent to their communities. And then they also had the next largest group were called Shulays. And those Shulays were an effort by African-American people to ready themselves for the collapse of this society. And they were positioning themselves so they would be able to take over their children's education and redirect it and keep hold. They wanted very much to keep a good data on their children and how they would arrive at college age and finish college, which is what Nadira and I are seeing now. Those children that we worked with then are now graduating from college and coming back to the communities per se. Not as many as we like, but it's alhamdulillah. One of our most success stories was the son of Loretta Smith, who is recently run for a city council position. And she and her son was our student. So we have those to cherish and remember. For myself, I've been to Hajj. Allah blessed me to, I hope with a Hajj that he accepts. And that was an incredible journey because our African-American people had come to this part of the world in what they called diaspora, but it was really the transatlantic slave trade. And I'm watching them try to change the narrative on it, but it was chattel slavery nonetheless, up and down, in and out. And the result was that our people would, well, for myself, the millions of African Americans who were kidnapped from their homes in Africa and brought into this part of the world and resettled. Of course, there was a large percentage that were Muslim, and they brought the Quran and Islam to this continent before it was a country. So that's a glorious history I hope that we will take a look at, because our young people are not understanding that the success that they're enjoying was prefaced by the blood, sweat, and tears of those that came before them, the indigenous Muslims, because they're trying to turn it.
Sister Miriam, with your permission, we will go into the next level of discussion. But before we do that, Sister Nadira, what's your story? Where you came from in your family and.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. And I must, before I go any further, let you know, Brother Washdi and the staff at MET, how much I appreciate the efforts of bringing community together during these very difficult times and making this possible. This is, alhamdulillah, just a blessing and insight and a blessing from Allah. I came from Gary, Indiana, and Gary, Indiana was known as, later on as Michael Jackson land, because that's where he was born. And it was a small town, steel mill town. I was very blessed. I had mother and father, one mother who worked diligently with foster care and children for about 35 years. And my father worked in a corn mill. I always remember that they would tell us, you stay together, back to back, and you'll be fine. I have 4 other siblings, all grown now. And it's funny because the older we get, the more we find in common. Before, when we were younger, oh, this person was different from that person. But now, as we've gotten older, we see more things in common. I was blessed to earn a scholarship on a speech I wrote. It was a predominantly African-American school. And during that time, it was a lot of issues going on. Brown versus Board of Education, which basically stated that you could not have segregated schools. I was in a predominantly African-American school. And during this time, they decided to bus the better students to an all-white school. This was also the time of Malcolm, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz. This was also the time of Dr. Elijah Muhammad. This is also the time of Vietnam. This is also the time of the Cold War, the result of that. This is also a time of dissatisfaction, very much similar to the times now, but on a different level. And when I was bused to this, and this was supposed to be a very an advantage for us, it was devastating, mainly because you're in a predominantly white school. The only thing you hear about is what you haven't done, what you're not capable of. And even though you're educated, you could see even in that time, the institutionalized racism. So it was very difficult, but we did well. We stayed together as much as we could. And these are the students that were bused with me. And we would engage each other in conversation about what we had done and could do and were able to do. So of course, when Malcolm was visible to the scene, we were attracted to that because he was talking about what African Americans could do. And so this inspired us, encouraged us, and after the busing, I found that I wanted to know more about who we were. Oftentimes I would ask my parents, and my parents would comment, well, you know, they'd be very generic about it. And later on, when I got older and understood and came home with some of the racism that was in the studies in the school, my parents would say, well, we didn't talk about it because we didn't want you to hate anyone. We wanted you to go there, get your education, and know that we love you. That was fine, but it wasn't enough. So I struck out, went to California, and my sister was there, and I was looking, as my mother asked me, what are you looking for? I said, I'm looking for me. I'm looking for who I am. And I said, haven't you ever wanted that? She says, I already know who I am. I didn't know that you were looking for anything. And I thought that was really funny because we don't understand. And I want to mention this to my young people. Everyone has a story or his story to tell. Listen, ask your parents. Find out, why do you do things like that? Or why do you think like that? And I'd like to turn that around for the parents. Do the same thing, to ask. What are you about? What do you like? Why? What's in now? Fashion. So anyway, to make a long story, because this is my life, the journey short, I came to California, and it was there that I was introduced to the Nation of Islam. The brothers were constantly recruiting. I was looking for something where I could belong and be proud of. And that's where I went.
Sister
Wonderful,
Nadira and
amazing story. Yes.
Sister Nadira and Sister Mariam, that will give us a chance now to talk about the spiritual awakening, you know, of the African American community. A lot of us, we don't really understand, that, the slaves that came here, historians today, they say there are 30 to 70% of the slaves came from West Africa, and most of them happen to be Muslims, happen to be judges, happen to be businesswomen and businessmen, happens to be rulers, happen to be, coming from very flourishing societies, but they were captured and they were brought and their culture were abducted. So when was the spiritual awakening for the African American, story? and especially in your context, when you're that the moment that you say it's time for me, to claim my narrative and my identity.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly right. All during my education, through the busing period, which was actually a freshman, through my senior year, I was like, no, this isn't right. And when we say slaves, we weren't. People believe or think, because we've all been programmed to some degree, that we were slaves and that's our only story. No one mentions the beautiful pyramids, the Nile River, the great civilizations. No one mentions those wonderful things. And you sure don't get it from the educational system. So what happened was, that was during my freshman to my senior year. Malcolm became more prevalent in his teaching and in the public eye. And whenever we said something positive about African Americans, you were being racist. And it was really interesting because the Nation of Islam was just the perfect place to get the narrative on who we were, where we came from, and also a pride in, at that time with James Brown, hey, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. That, and the naturals and the big hair and the boots and all of those wonderful times that some people don't understand as being part of that progression to understanding, hey, it's okay to look like me. I'm really cool. I really have something to offer. And I have offered a lot, even though it's been covered up.
What year was that, Sister Nadira, when you embraced Islam?
I would say it was in the 60s. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Allah bless you. How about you, Sister Mariam? What's your story with Islam and how you came, to the beauty of the realization that you are a Muslim?
Alhamdulillah, I actually came, and as a result of a speech by the great people's champ, Muhammad Ali, when he came to the Northwest, when he was making his rounds during his resistance of government oppression. And that was in 1969. I would come here to the Portland area in 1971, and we still had some very important things to learn, and that's what I had done. And you asked the question about our journey, and I would say that it was always resistance. It never stopped. The
Right.
resistance in various forms, even right down to just commonplace things, it was always there. And myself, I had something of a genetic memory for Islam. And when I heard the word Allah, I went toward that energy, which at that time came from Muhammad Ali, may Allah give him the highest station in the paradise. So that was essentially it. I found my place also in the Nation of Islam because I always wanted to belong to something. I had been displaced at a very early age, and I just had one displacement after another, and I never found any comfort until I joined the Nation of Islam and carved out a place for myself. And then I joined we were able to come through the 70s, and about mid 70s, 1975, when Imam Warthi Muhammad took possession, was elected the leader of the community. Then that's when we evolved into the Quran. And then that brought me to the place that I wanted to be when we joined as a result of the understanding the Quran, trying to understand the Quran. It joined us with the Christians and the Jews and other people of faith. And we were able to recognize faith and righteousness and truth no matter where we saw it.
So in your perspective, the struggle, to claim that narrative of love and unity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with our creator, the most merciful, the most compassionate, the involvement of the Muslim Community Center came to reality in the mid 60s and then evolved, more in the 70s. And, how was the community at that time? For our young audience, that doesn't read history, how was the struggle, to keep that identity alive,
The life was highly disciplined, and it cut across all the areas of your life, and the expectations were very high. And that's what made us, gave us a focus. This is how we got so much done. We talk about the 40 years that it took to build the Muslim Community Center of Portland, but it's just a blink of the eye. And we had a good time doing it. And that's what we hope to share with our young people, and give them that same sense of well-being inside and outside of the community, that we love you, you're going to be protected, we're going to arm you with knowledge, and we're all going forward together.
Sister Nadira, how was it that time, in Portland, Oregon, when you moved to Portland?
It was beginning. It was a beginning community. It was difficult for some to let go. And when I say let go, I should say evolve, or to go through. The difference of Islam as they knew it, or as we knew it in the Nation of Islam, was a very encouraging, inspiring time. But also we were dealing with nationalism. So there was difficulty in some saying, okay, do I have to give up my nationalism, being who I am, to practice Islam as I receive it from the Quran? And then there was those who said, no, I'm staying with the Nation of Islam. So there was some divisiveness there. And as a result, here we go, we evolved again, or we went through that as well. And we came into the pure, or the true Islam. The Nation of Islam promoted what was needed for the time for the people, the psychology of understanding. And that's why you've got some of those wonderful leaders from there. Muhammad Ali, Malcolm, Al-Hajj Shabazz, because that inspired and encouraged us. Then, with the change with Imam Warthi Muhammad to Islam in the traditional state, there were those who found difficulty in transitioning. For me, as Marian had mentioned, Allah's name is Allah's name. And when this presentation was given, there was no problem with me making that transition. And I'm thankful for that. And I want the young people to know that sometimes things may not look as like they would like them to, but that transition, just like we're doing now, is necessary. This is a whole nother level in education now. It wasn't what we knew, but this transition is necessary, and we can do it. And this is what I'm very pleased that you're offering. The school, MET, is offering this platform.
So in the struggle for Muslim women, like other women struggled, within the civil rights, and today,
Right.
women still struggling. In your opinion, how did Islam brought, gender equity in terms of the faith, the Quran and the Sunnah, the tradition of the Prophet, and how do we today embrace it, in our Muslim community, in the American Muslim community, or Muslim worldwide, in terms of the gender equity?
It's a very, very well placed
That's a good
question. For us, my heroine was Sister Clara Muhammad, because she held her family together when her husband was unjustly prisoned for 4 years. He was too old for the draft, but they had to get him and the powerful ideas that he was spreading off the street. And so they jailed him unjustly, and she was able to hold her family together. We also, because I had gone to the schools here in the Northwest, I spoke what was called a mainstream English. So that put me right in, put me right into the middle of things, because at the time we had some very powerful African-American women, among them Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president of the United States. She was one of our role models. We had My favorite was Fannie Lou Hamer, because Fannie Lou Hamer told the people, she said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it was a phrase you coined, but she was able to sign up people to vote, almost 2 million people, 200,000 people to vote, just with sticking with that. And so we had a job to do, and we had inside of us everything we needed to meet the challenge.
Sister Nadira,
And for many of us too, the women were workers. We're talking about a lot of single mothers. We're talking about women who are used to working in the fields or with the men. So the gender equity was more so there than in the society that we were in. And so it was something that Islam ensured, but we still had to make it work. We could talk about it, but we'd have to do it. And because we were used to being out front as a result of the societal conditions, the gender equity, I think, is something that we have understood. And I want to correct, when we talk about slaves, we're talking about people who were enslaved, who weren't born slaves, and who were brought here not volunteering or wanting to be here, but brought here to work. And that's what we've done. And we built the country, along with many others.
Yeah. So in your perspective, Sister Nadira and Sister Maryam, you know, the issue of race, you know, Islam didn't only address the gender issues, but also address the issue of race. You know, Allah described, you know, that Allah made us from male and female and made us into nations and tribes to get to know each other. You know, the strength of the Muslim community, that we address vast cultures, you know, Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, and South America. You know, do you feel that, you know, we have that balance in the race issue? Or we still struggling, you know, or there are room for improvements, you know, or we went backwards?
Always room for improvement. And yes, we still are working with the racism. It's alive and well. But I think we're working through it because conditions are causing people of all different ethnicities to realize that the need and the cause is the same. And injustice for one is an injustice for any of us. And I think that we're working through it, but it still very much is alive and well, even with my brothers and sisters, because of our orientation. We've been educated. We don't know until we've interacted with someone. And then well, they're this way. I thought, where did that thought come from? Where did that perception come from? And oftentimes we have perceptions that we have no idea that we have until we come face to face with that ethnicity or that person.
How about you, Sister Maryam, you know, the issue of race, you know, and racial equity within the Muslim community?
Well, for me personally, it was a transformation of my heart, because it was very comfortable to call people names and to try to draw a line in the sand and to be confrontational, but that was not a solution. And I'm so happy with what I see now with the citizen journalists, with the citizen scientists, where everyone who has something to contribute. And all of it starts with mutual respect and getting to know each other with mutual respect. Our effort right here, right now, is the cornerstone of getting to know each other, because we'll pass each other in the prayer halls, we'll pass each other on the street and so on. But to take the time to get to know the person and relate to them and find common ground with them. And you know, we're talking about other people, but we need to do that with Muslims first. And so that when you see them in their workplace, in their school place, whatever they're doing, you can contribute your support and encouragement to them and let them know how much you appreciate their personal and individual effort. And hopefully before we leave our effort here, we have a few names that we really want to remember who brought us to this point. It wasn't an overnight experience. It's taken some years, and it was a learning process. It didn't change.
I remember when Mariam, my daughter, our daughter, she was young, she had a t-shirt. It says, I am half Afghan and half Yemeni, plus half Yemeni equal 100% an American.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something wrong to be an American today? I want your honest reflections and opinions. People mix with America, the foreign policy, and America, the beautiful America that we experience here. Malcolm X, he made that transformation. After the Hajj, he saw the reality and the beauty of the faith, the multiracial, multi-ethnic. And when he came back from the Hajj, he had the courage, that he want to heal, with the white America. He want to heal with Europe, America. So, is there something wrong to be, an American of an African background, an American of Yemeni or Afghan or whatever you want to be?
No, nothing at all. Almighty God, our creator of the heavens and the earth, has placed us here for a purpose and for a reason. And that destiny was decided before we made our physical appearance. And it was the confidence that we would have in ourselves and the love that we would have for our creator that would help us meet this challenge. And the great political thinker, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, he was taking our case of genocide to the floor of the United Nations before his brutal assassination in front of his family. And so, but it didn't stop anything. They thought that and the same thing with Malcolm, with Dr. King. They actually thought that by killing us, they could stop them, but that only made more, that only increased our awareness and and spread the responsibility for what needed to be done among more people, because then people were really realized that we were that messianic idea that we had in our mind that someone was going to save us. No, you're going to save yourself and anybody else that you love. So that's just that.
And we still see that racism today in these Americas. We still see it. So when we see our young people shot and killed and lack of justice, we know that the struggle continues. What is beautiful in Islam is that it gives you a proper perspective. It gives you a perspective where it's not one of just kill and be killed. It's a matter of understanding that right will prevail. Allah is still God. Those things have not changed, and He will protect those and have mercy on those who call His name every substance. But that does not mean that we can sit still and say, okay, well, it's like this and it's been like this. Yes, it has, but we're still here. And we're still progressing. And we're still developing leaders. And we're still developing in the way of strength and faith that is necessary for us to continue as African Americans, but as Muslims.
So, my beloved sisters, in today's struggle, for claiming that love, how do you see that, our friends and allies in the larger community, how they can address, Islamophobia? In your perspective, today Muslims are doctors, lawyers, teachers, business people, religious leaders, we opened, our hearts and our minds, and we practice whatever the Prophet practiced in the early stage of Islam, the mutual brotherhood and the sisterhood. But we still struggle, with this fear of Islam and Muslims, How do you feel that, how can we voice, with our friends and allies they can defeat Islamophobia today.
But it starts right in our own homes, our own neighborhoods, and our own family. We've recently, well, we're still struggling with vandalism of the wall that faces our masjid. And so we were working on two things at the same time, which we do all the time, and that was wudu stations and a fence. So with the vandalism and the ugly graffiti, we had to shift the energies and put up a fence that you could not climb over, and strengthen our security systems. So not security, but surveillance of the masjid property. And for that to happen, the other communities the network among us has got to be strong. So in the event that any of us have to respond to a hate crime, or we have something that confronts our whole city, which was the the slaying of the innocent fathers in defense of two young women, that they had the right to ride that max without being harassed, and which is all part of what we experienced in the 60s and 70s. And but the response of the Muslim community was so honorable, and it is still a model. Even 3 years later, we're still remembering their sacrifice. We're still keeping a vigil over their families. We are still having the best things to say and positive things to say about ourselves. We're never going to change people bad mouthing us and talking out the side of their neck, but it will be done. We can confront that just with our example, so, and us as African-American people, maybe they could argue with other people from other, well, you just came here in the 1900s, or you just came here in 1930s. No, we were here before you were. And we still have an open, loving consciousness that we want to share, and we can get to where we need to be together.
I think that's excellent, because I agree wholeheartedly, because we're talking about organizations now that are forming as we continue to tell our narrative collectively as Muslims. So we have the different organizations that help with feeding the needy and with dealing with legal rights of Muslims and speaking out. This is so necessary, and this is what is happening, and this is bringing results. It's bringing results. We cannot be quiet. We must address what the issues are and be comfortable and not apologize for being Muslim or speaking out. That is our right as being Americans, so we are told. These are our rights. Now, whether that's enacted, that's another thing, but we have to keep pressing.
In your perspective, my beloved sisters, as we struggle, for our rights, to defeat Islamophobia, to defeat all bigotry and hate,
Yes.
what in your perspective, for us as American Muslims, how do we, what do we as American Muslim need to do to support other causes, of other people that are struggling as well? Today, Latino are struggling. Yesterday, the African American, and still they're struggling. The indigenous people, today discrimination against, Asians, East Asians. I mean, because of the, COVID-19 virus, they're facing, when the political rhetorics, labeling, Chinese virus, and people get discriminated because of ignorant people. How do we, as American Muslims, can support others? You have lived the struggle, and you are still living the struggle, and what's your advice for other community organizations that are not participating in the public square, in particular the American Muslim organizations?
I would like to suggest something. It may sound like a big project, but it would be wonderful if we were able to, in our raising of monies and doing different things. Our education is critical. Communicating like this and having different platforms where people get to hear in the privacy or publicly, but also it'd be wonderful if we owned a radio station or had a television station, those places where people watch but don't necessarily have to comment, that they are able to see, and we are influencing them through truth and issues which they probably are encountering as well, but don't have the support. So we do have to, it's not that everything that we participate in has to be Muslim-based, but it is helpful that we find out what organizations we can agree upon, which support the health and the well-being of the society. Where do I want to fit in? Where do you want to fit in? And that's only happening as a result of people sharing their own initiative, their own narrative, she mentioned, because many of the youth that we've seen so far on this webinar are youth that we saw when they were children.
That's right.
And now they have gone on to be doctors and they're giving back to the community. We have to have places for people to be able to communicate, to socialize, get to know one another. Those are big ideas, but they're very capable. And this is part of what is happening here at MED.
For those that joined us just a few minutes ago, we are at the American Muslim in the Public Square, episode 6, with our great founding sisters, not mothers, sisters. May Allah bless you, Sister Maryam and Sister Nadira. You have shaped my life. You know, I came here when I was 19. You have been a great mentor and great teachers for me, you know, to understand the beauty of our Muslim community, in particular the African American community. In your perspective, you know, what is the biggest challenge today facing us as an American Muslim community? Or challenges, you know, if you address 3 of them, and how to improve these challenges and how to defeat these challenges?
For me, it would be to transition and pass on to our young people a model that they can continue to develop and will continue to evolve as they are evolving. We have in our community the New Muslim class, and this is run by, organized and developed and cared for by our young professionals. And they have textbooks that they work with. They have the best of the media technology that they work with, and they can attract young people, old people like me, and other, in order to get to make sure we have the best of the language, because words make people, and as human beings, our mind and intellect are developed by the powerful word environments that we live in, and that's what they do. They give us the best of it, and you get to choose. So they have a cross section of materials and information, of qualified approaches to things that get good results, and it's small. It won't impact as many as we would like, but it gets the job done. And when you leave there, you feel like you've done something. You feel like you've accomplished something. You've learned something. You've given something back, and then you go back to your busy life. But at the same time, you're very grateful to Almighty Allah that you were able to be present when those ideas were forming. You were able to have your input, and your input was respected.
I agree. We need to have a place for them to give back to the community. A safe place, in the sense that we have to be careful and not too critical with each other. We can correct each other in the best way, but to have the safe place where you can communicate. You can talk about your doubts in regards to your faith, but how you want to help. So we need these places. We need to make people aware through our participation in other organizations, and then also recruit to encourage others that We want to hear their voice, that they have an importance, that you have a place. We want you. We need you. And as I mention all the time, and I'll have to mention it again, the struggle continues. So it doesn't end with us. Ours is just one journey. They have their own history that they're writing. There's a head that speaks of that when we wake up as vendors, how are we going to use our day? We can use that day for ourselves, for our soul, or against our soul. What are we going to do? And they don't need to feel that they are inferior or that they are not enough value because they're younger. That's not true. We have to encourage that. We have to provide places for them to engage. We have to have people who are willing to listen, who are respectful, and also agree with this type of activity. And that's not just for the youth. That's for elders. We need those places. I find often where Muslims are uncomfortable with other Muslims. And we have to be mindful of that. Why? You're my brother or sister in faith. So we have to encourage and provide places and support those who are doing similar activities.
Sister, go ahead, Sister Nadira. Sister Maryam, go ahead.
I would just like to say, I'd just like to give you a very beautiful example of what Nadira is saying. And that is that we have now joined with us an incredible young brother whose mother is Dr. Aisha Musa. And her son, Adam, has just recently returned to this area. He's applied at Portland State. He was accepted at Columbia University, but he's chosen Portland State. And that's because of the hard work, Washi, and the way that you gave yourself to the program, the International Studies program, along with Dr. John Manderville, and in the presence of Dr. Nolan Talan, that was an important vehicle for bringing in these kinds of incredibly talented people from all over the world that would come and spend their donate their generosity of their spirit. They came here as students and doctoral candidates, but they stayed with the community and taught and lived among us. And that was something that the MET was very good at, was bringing in resident scholars. They would stay with us for about 3 days. We'd have 3 days of intensity with them. And then this helped us to motivate ourselves and push ourselves forward. My computer is saying that you can't hear me. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this was, and Adam's father was Tawfiq Abdul Hadi, and he taught Arabic in the Muslim Community Center in Portland. And he was one of our first teachers. He's passed away now. May Allah give him the highest station.
Ameen.
There it is. And from there, and that's how it's going to go around. It might take 30 years, but it's coming. We just have to be patient. We have to be ready for our turn, and be there to do it all over again for him and anybody else that would need our help.
Our youth are not patient, you know.
Yes.
They want to.
But
I
it's
wasn't
okay.
patient.
I'm gonna give them credit anyway.
33 years ago, I wasn't patient, you know, but
Okay,
I
you
was.
had good manners, Wajdi. You were your mother's son.
But that's true. My mother, you know, always told me, you know, just be patient. The time will come that you will address everything that you want to address.
Okay.
I had great mentors like you. I had great mentors like Nuhat Tolan, Dr. Tolan. I had great mentors like Imam Najib and Brother Nabi Dawan and Brother Muhammad, Ali Muhammad, you know, may Allah bless him, you know.
Yes.
And Brother Shahid and Brother Wesley, so many brothers and sisters, Sister Salma, Dr. Masood, Brother Ayub, Sister Gail, and so many, Gulzar and Sister Shafqat. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. what's your advice for our youth that wants to rush? Where we can find common grounds between the seniors of our community and the young, where we learn from each other by being patient, so we can define a good roadmap, that we pass it on with wisdom and love and care,
Just speaking the common language of the people, not to go too many lofty concepts that we can't nail down, and that they feel our love, the love from our hearts.
Sister Nadira,
I
what's
think
your
it's
advice
really
for
important that we.
your advice to our young professionals, how you get them involved while the elders are still there to learn from them and their experiences?
I think it's twofold. The youth who are coming in need to listen and understand that when they're talking to an elder, this is someone who has lived. We don't know what their circumstances are, but the young people need to understand that we must show respect, which they probably, in all cases that I've seen, that they do, but listening. And in the same tone, the elders need to know that even with all their information and knowledge and living, that there is something to be learned from the youth. They have ideas. There's so many things happening now that were our time that are happening now that we need their expertise. We need their support. We need them, both us, to listen, to journal. You got some thoughts, write them down, journal it. Draw a picture, tape it.
Right.
Do something where you are able to recap your thoughts. A lot of times we might have thoughts and they just go by. So listen with respect and receive information. Seek good knowledge, good information, not careless, useless knowledge, but good information. And in all of this, keep the faith. Keep the faith in what you're doing that is pleasing to your Creator. We've been given this gift. We've been given this gift, and that gift is life. Now, what are we going to do with that gift? What are we going to do with this gift? We're opening this gift. So they have to realize that even as young people, they're opening a gift that Allah has given them. So now how are you going to use it? Are you going to share it? Are you going to learn it? Are you going to use it in the best way? Or are you going to throw the gift away? And we need everyone's gift because everyone has something to give. Everyone has something. Young, old, in between, and our professionals, alhamdulillah. And even if you're not a professional, the point we realize that we have been given this life to make the world better as servants of Allah and of each other. And things will only get better if we work together to make it happen. And patience is a key, commitment, and it's doable. And Allah will bless us as He has. I see it every day, even with this condition. I see it every day. I see people coming together because we're being forced to step back, focus on what is important to us, and then act accordingly.
We have a few questions from the audience. I will ask Sister Sahar if you can address some of the questions, the written questions from the audience. Sister Sahar. Anyway, so in your opinion, what is the most impactful way in which Muslim Americans can give back to their communities?
To touch the sensitivities of the people and then show and help them with a solution and become part of that solution. And then once, if Allah bless them to solve the problem, to apply that same solution to everything around you that's not working right.
Can you elaborate more in terms of the sensitivities, Sister Marie?
The sensitivities are part of the way that you approach things with a respectful attitude for that human nature, that precious human nature that needs to be nurtured. and a pure heart. Those things come through before words come through, and dress and culture and all these other window dressings. The human being by themselves just generates that energy that other human beings need. And then from there, once you can read the person and see what kind of dialogue you can have with them, then we can start to follow certain rules in engagement that will give you a successful outcome, and the two of you can leave as the Surah says, lakum dinakum waliya din, to you be your way, to me be mine, but it's the mutual respect.
Sister Nadira?
I think we've already touched on it. We have to put it in physical form, but it's just a matter of being aware. And awareness comes from feeling certain things, learning certain things, and then being mindful that you're not the only one with a story. Everyone has a story. We don't know why a person acts a certain way. You don't know why I act a certain way. So you ask me, you want to communicate. But even not knowing means there are certain courtesies and certain adab and certain etiquette that should happen anyway. They don't necessarily happen for all people because all people don't necessarily show manners. But we have to show an awareness that we are learning or willing to learn from them and to understand.
We have a question, from Sister. The struggle for single mothers, today, young mothers, the communities are not addressing their needs. In your perspective, what solutions, we can address for single mothers that lost their spouses due to car accidents, to divorce, or to whatever, reasons that they lost their spouse?
Well, I hear those types of, as probably Marian does as well, situations, conditions of single mothers. It's very hard. They need to strive on their own, because they probably are doing it anyway, to form a network or another sister or some friend that they feel that they can trust and be open with. But also, we need to have our own. That's the project right in itself. We need to have our own women's or Muslim women's or a center where they can go, get assistance, get help. We need to do that.
Yes, hopefully we will, inshallah. This is the kind of work we do at Albania Head Start, where the teachers are actually mentors for young single mothers. And we walk them through the painful processes in their life. We help them to address their child's needs while at the same time progressing toward healing. And that's our main purpose with the work that we do. And that's so that you have someone to care for your children that care about you. I had an incredible teacher named Izdihar Harari. She was working on her PhD at Portland State. And she explained to us that we were the vanguard. We were the vanguard to keep children from arriving in society without enough mothering and mentoring so that they could go on with their own lives. And because children can be very resilient. And that 2 years that they spend with us in Head Start, similar to the 2 years I spent with my grandmother, equipped me to meet some incredible challenges in life. And that you'll only grow strong, and you'll only network with other people who are stronger than you are. And it can be very rewarding.
It's good. In your perspective, how can we keep the marriage in the Muslim community, in the Muslim community? Our youth is marrying now outside, the faith.
Oh,
and I remember Dr. Tulan, as an urban planner long time ago, in dreaming of establishing the community center here, our swimming pool, our public space. He said we have to think about senior citizens and our youth to stay in the faith. They have to get to know each other, so the marriage is going to happen within the Muslim community. So he says no to isolation and no to assimilation, rather than the positive integration, to integrate the community resources, so our children get to know each other and get married into each other and create the beautiful hyphenated, of each other,
Mm-hmm.
In your perspective, how can we keep that marriages alive in the Muslim community and within the Muslim community?
By not making it difficult for young people to marry, by finding
How?
creative ways to help them get to know each other and see how they are mutually compatible. The leadership with the kind that Imam Najib does an incredible thing with his the marriages that are done in his administration, and it's a model for us to, because you have contracts, marriage contracts, things are written down, dowries are paid, a future of the marriage is planned. And I understand what you're saying, Waji. How do we bring our young people even to the door of marriage? And that's a real problem for me, because I have 4 sons and 4 daughters and none of them are married. So I'm going to talk to myself first.
And what we find is that they will go online anyway. So I think we have to be creative. We had at one point in time the youth coming together. No, we're not supposed to mingle, but it's like we had a gathering, a lecture, a dinner, and the lecture was about marriage and mates and marrying Muslims. And alhamdulillah, we had a wonderful couple who were interested in doing that, and they helped us to provide occasions where unmarried men and women could come together and talk, and it was supervised by the elders. And unfortunately, as soon as they found one for their daughter, they were gone. So we didn't have a support for that, but it worked. But it has to be coordinated, and also it has to be supported, and it has to be, look, this is the reason why we're having this, and the underlining, constantly giving them information about making wise selections in marriage and the benefits of marrying a Muslim. Mm-hmm. And not just marrying a Muslim or being married so that you can get out of the house. But that it has its beauty, and then have examples. And we had those things that I would say some time ago, and it was working, but we needed the commitment of the elders to help sustain it.
That's very important. We also, to borrow from our illustrious past, when a young woman talked about being married, the first thing we would ask her is, do you know how to cook? Can you keep it? Do you, what are you expecting? And that's the area, that's the gray areas. What exactly are you expecting out of the marriage? What do you bring to the marriage? And if you want to be married, how far are you willing to go? And we start preparing our children for marriage when they're very young. We show them then how to have etiquette toward male and female, how to respect the young girl, to respect the young boy. And those make for good marriages when you have good manners and the family is strong. Got to keep the family cleaned up, because some of these families, we don't want to marry into them and then it's chaos. So it's Allah's God. He gives males to whom he pleases, females. He's given us the male and female relationship. He will protect it. He will guard it. And you just have to follow the rules.
And when you say that, I have to continue, because with that, right now, for those who may be listening or passing on the word, there's two projects right there that we need youth or elders and elders involved in. There's program mothers and what should I say? Singles. Now that may sound kind of loose, but you know what I mean. Unmarried couples to come together to meet and greet each other. You won't have to go on nothing's wrong with that. I'm not saying anything's wrong with going online, but you actually get to see the person. They haven't had a chance to paint up, fix up. You'll see what you have. So those are two projects right there that are really needed.
Sister Nadira and Sister Mariam, there is a question from our audience. A sister is asking, with the history of this nation also was its welcoming of oppressed people, those who face oppression due to their ethnicity, gender, religion, or political views. How do you view, the current nationalist America, a threat to all oppressed groups with the country or global virus that will not only hurt home, but spread elsewhere? What can Muslims, Christians, Jews, and people of goodwill, help, to build a global community? What's in your perspective, how people can collaborate together,
I think it's happening. Once again, we're talking about communication and awareness, and we are clear that we've been given a lot of misinformation. And we also have seen nationalism on a scale where we should be dealing with global. So what has been the response of people? I have seen people in different organizations making the mask, checking in and finding creative ways and going online to tell people, well, look, I go walking, this is my change in my schedule now. I used to just go on a lot of different errands. My job was very demanding. Now I don't have a job and I have this time now. And so what I would suggest is what is happening now, that we communicate with each other in whatever way that takes its form, and that we do as globally people are doing. Now, we do know that mayors and different governments and things like that have closed down their area, and then others have opened it up. That still does not mean that we should not take the precautions that have been given to us, but we also are clear that there is always something to do, and to join in with other organizations who are looking at ways.
That's right. And that we're socially responsible, the wearing of the mask and armbands. My daughter is threatening to wear an armband to let people know that if you need a mask, I got one. So we're responding. It was slow response. There was a lot of confusing information, and you really had to use common sense about the best thing to do. And yes, we want to see the global peace come together, but right now we just got to take care of ourselves, each other, and our families, and then we will hash it together. If you're confused about it, just take notes, and we will come back and straighten our notes out. But this is so critical.
If you were given to become the leader of the Muslim community, I mean, to become the president of any capacity, powerful organization in the Muslim community, what you will do, Sister Nadira and Sister Mariam?
In regards to what?
Regards to what's everything or your aspirations, what's in your mind, something that you really, bother you and you don't see that the Muslim community is not addressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. That is a very good question.
It's a big question.
Because I'm right in the middle of it, I'm not so critical of what the community may or may not be doing. I'm just trying to do the part that I'm responsible for, the part that I understand, the part that I can be consistent and effective with, I just is small, but it's paid off. And yes, we all have a lot of very deep concerns. And once we evolve out of this, then we can talk more about our aspirations. Inshallah, if it pleases God.
Sir Nadira, your aspirations, for this Portland Muslim community, for the Ummah, something that you will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after a long life. And you said, yes, Allah, this is what I.
I'm not praying for a long life. I'm just praying for a good one. Alhamdulillah. I have aspirations that we do not have the differences amongst ourselves, and we work towards just communicating and working with others in the best way, but not as you mentioned with Dr. Tolan, Allah have mercy on his soul, when you said he was not talking about assimilation or
Isolation.
Or isolation, but a healthy integration. I think that's so key for a leader, but not to lose sight of the well-being of the people overall. I have a lot of different aspirations, and as we talk, there's a lot of things that I can see, but I know that there is a need for us to not be afraid of each other, not to have the xenophobic idea, and that we have to be aware and make others aware. And even the silent ones, to let them know it's okay to speak, that you have a platform, that you are safe in voicing your opinion in the best way.
And that's the critical piece. We had to find our voice. At some point in your development as a Muslim, you find your voice, and then you build concepts that you can live out effectively. And that's the most important thing, because that's what it's going to come down to in the end.
And if you're just beginning a business or starting something, you are the leader. You are making steps towards being a leader. It doesn't have to start as a grandiose idea, but what is it that I would like to see happen that I can control or that I can do well to help? And then you develop these different qualities and your aspirations change. But the main aspiration that I can think of is that, corny as it may sound, world peace, but is that we learn to treat people with respect and fairness, that we honor them as creation of Allah, of our Creator. And that, as you mentioned earlier, Brother Wajdi, that we were created in different tribes, but not to hate each other, but to come to know each other. That sounds like a simple concept, but it's taken all this time, and I know it's going to take some more for us to even grasp and utilize it. But unfortunately and fortunately, sometimes under crisis or things that we're going through now, it causes us to step up and to befriend or to get to know your neighbor.
I agree. And one thing that I learned from you, Wajdi, that was very important is how to help people live up to the best in themselves and remind them of the best, that they can be the best of themselves, regardless to the circumstances, because the circumstances could change. So are you going to fall apart because things change? No, you're going to continue to be because you have to live up to that. You have to live up. We choose to live up to what people think of us, and we're struggling with that. And also to share with people the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, perfect example, and the way that he lived his life, and the warmth and the humor and the tolerance that he taught and the forgiveness that he exemplified. And even if you made a terrible mistake, like at the Battle of Uhud, you were in the wrong place. But what happened was I still had to respect your opinion in the community, and I forgave you, and we moved on. And that's how you grow. That's how you grow, by forgiving and moving on.
That brings us to the final questions, and may Allah bless each one of you and bless all of our audience and all of us. Today, we see a lot of sisters and brothers, they get tired, burned out, but you are still kicking, Sister Nadira and Sister Mariam, and may Allah bless you. What inspires you, what brings that energy, that positive energy in you, and to work the best and to work the hardest, and who's your role model, of inspiration,
Mhm.
Seriously. I mean, I can name, people that were with us, and people get burned out.
Mhm.
Muhammad didn't give up in his people, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his people harassed him, people attacked him. He said, in Taif, that story when he was bleeding, he said, "Oh Allah, guide my people. They don't know what I know." He didn't curse them.
No.
They, and then when he died, Rahmatullah alayhi, Abu Bakr, he jumped into leadership. He said, "Whoever worship Muhammad, Muhammad is dead, and whoever worship Allah, Allah is
Right.
everlasting."
Mhm.
So this is the power, of faith, of certainty, So what inspires you, Sister Nadira and Sister Mariam, to work the hardest, and you're still working hard. May Allah bless you,
For myself, I
Bless
love
all of
what I
us.
do. Because we're educators that are out in the community, I have if I'm in Fred Meyer or some store, and a child that I know personally, the family, is cutting up in the store and giving his mother a bad time, I just walk over there and look at him. And that's what it's come down to. I've earned that. So I don't know. What can I say? And he calms down and start listening to his mother again. But sometimes that's all we have to do. It's just listen and show up and listen. And yes, we do burn out, and I'm sorry about that. We come and visit you with soup and food when you don't feel well. But you've got to stay in there. I mean, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want the hereafter? How bad do you want to leave a legacy to your children that they can't argue with you about? And that's what it comes down to.
Sister Nadira, what inspires you? What ignites that fire in you every day?
My grandchildren. No. But besides them, what inspires me is that when I see and remember MET, when I remember you and still see you, like you said, you came here when you were 19, brother. 19, not 29, not 39, but 19. And we're talking about classes in the basement of about 12 students at PSU. And I'm looking now and I'm like, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Then I look at your staff or the staff of MET. This inspires me. What also inspires me is that I may see, as Miriam pointed out, a student who'll come over to me who's like 6 something, and I'm looking at them. I'm backing up because I don't know who we are, and it's Mama Nadira. Don't you remember me? And I'll say no. That's why I backed up. And then they'll laugh. They said I was in 3rd grade, and I still remember the poem you taught me. And I'm like, oh, alhamdulillah. I said, oh, that means praise be to God. I'm not cussing at you. And they start laughing. And they said, you still look the same. I said, this is a clothing. This is a blessing. That inspires me. What also inspires me is that when I see some of the young people, like I said, that have been panelists, speaking now, at MET and having professions of their own and children of their own and striving to maintain the tradition of Islam. That inspires me. And every day that I wake up, I think, besides making my dua, I think of that vendor. All right, you've been given another day. Now, are you going to use this? How are you going to use this day to serve Allah? He's given you another day. What are you going to do? And it's not anything necessarily monumental, but it's something extra or something that you find that you're doing more in Ramadan and we should do all year long. Those kinds of things inspire me. And what inspires me is when I hear good words from people, not necessarily about me, but about other people and the work. And I know these people. And I'm thinking, you want to have a good name and you want to please Allah and you want to do a work that will answer for you. Those are little inspirations, but they're big ones too. And they're the ones that constantly come to mind when I think about being inspired. So you're right. I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm tired. But I know, what did I say at the beginning? The struggle continues. And if we don't do it, who is supposed to do it? This is our trust. This is our gift. If we don't do it, who else is supposed to ask to do it? So I'm asking everyone who has a gift and a trust from Allah to do something. There is something that we all can do.
Very well put.
That brings us to our conclusion. We want words of wisdom from you to our community, to our listeners and audience. You know, it's your call, Sister Nadira and Sister Maryam, your advice, your dua, your...
all of that, our advice and our dua. I've experienced that with the Ramadan food drive, to see our young people come forward with some of the best organized food and distribution methods that I had ever seen. That inspired me. And I pray Allah will bless them as they organized. And we had a successful food drive and fed so many families. And that's what we have to offer.
And I want to say, please, those of you who are listening, and Brother Wajdi, you know you're loved. Make dua for us as well, because we need the dua, and we need to know. And this is the silent, or not the silent, but the unseen that comes to us through your dua. So please don't forget us. And there are many, 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 many more who are working hard in the way of Allah.
Yeah.
And we need more.
Mm-hmm. And
Sister Nadira,
MET. Go MET.
Sister
Yay!
Nadira, Sister, may Allah bless you, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah,
Sister
we
Nadira,
love you. We love you. Alhamdulillah, for the sake of
May Allah
Allah.
bless your spouses. May Allah bless your children and grandchildren. You know, we are very in debt to each one of you. We are in debt to our indigenous people. We are in debt to our African American, you know, brothers and sisters. You know, without your struggle, we wouldn't enjoy a lot of our civil rights today. So I'm very thankful to being exposed in my first few days in Portland to both of you. If it wasn't both of you and others, you know, I wouldn't be active to be here today. That, believe it or not, you know, you inspired me every day. When I see you loving and happy and working hard, that's a story that, you know, need to be told every day and every day. When I see Imam Najib, when I see Brother Umar Shabazz, when I see Brother Mikhail, when I see Wesley Salahuddin, you know, and so many others that have inspired us, and some of them have returned back to Allah. This is the story that our young brothers and sisters need to know, our young daughters and sons need to know, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose whomever He wants. And some of us take it and some of us reject it. So those of us that takes it, we need to keep that amana and pass it on. May Allah bless you and may Allah reward you. you know, Ramadan Mubarak, you know, and Eid Mubarak. And may Allah
Eid's
bless you in
coming
these
up,
final days.
inshallah.
Ameen, inshallah. I'm very thankful to Sister
Jazakallah
Sahar
khair.
and Brother Jawad and Sister Juwaria for their help and their technical support.
Yeah,
Sister
technical
Sahar,
support.
you want to have a question, Sahar? Sister Sahar.
I'm good, Brother Wajdi. Thank you. I really enjoyed today's conversation. God bless you, ladies, for sharing your insights and your beautiful, souls with us. We enjoy you, and may God bless you always to keep on doing the good work and the passionate energy that you're doing. God bless your hearts. Thank you.
And God bless you
And
all.
the same to you, my beloved sisters.
Alhamdulillah. And for our audience, this is our beloved sisters Nadira and Maryam Dawan. They are part of the Portland Muslim community and also part of the Muslim Community Center of Portland. For those that didn't support the Muslim Community Center, please do support. It's a very unique and very inclusive and very equitable community. May Allah bless them and reward them for everything that they have done. They have paved the way for so many of us, you know, in the history of Portland Muslim community. May Allah bless you both. May Allah bless your children. And let us recite Al-Fatiha. Sister Maryam, would you please, you do the Quran and Nadira does the English translation.
أعوذ بالله من
I'll do the Arabic. My English is not good. Okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Amen. Mary, you can do the English too.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, praise be to God, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, the most gracious, the most merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way on which thou hast bestowed thy grace, and not the way in which thy wrath is brought down. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. You know, my best to all of you. Eid Mubarak, inshallah.
And the same to you, my beloved brother. Assalamu
Eid
alaikum.
Mubarak to you also.
Sister
That's
Nadira,
right. Eid
wireless
Mubarak.
hug, you know. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Alaikum.